We like to think we make career decisions rationally. We weigh the pros and cons, we consider our options, we maybe even make a spreadsheet, but here's what nobody tells you. Most career regrets don't come from the decisions that seemed obviously wrong at the time. They come from the ones that seemed perfectly reasonable. The safe choices, the logical moves, the paths that made sense to everyone around you. And 10 years later, you look back and realize you were optimizing for the wrong thing entirely. Let me tell you about Sarah. 10 years ago, she had two job offers. One was at a prestigious consulting firm. Great salary, impressive name on her resume, clear progression path. The other was at a small startup working on education technology, lower pay, uncertain future, but the work genuinely excited her. She picked the consulting firm. Of course she did. It was the smart choice. Fast forward to today, Sarah makes good money. She has a nice apartment. On paper, everything looks fine, but she spends her evenings scrolling through articles about education reform, wondering what her life would look like if she'd taken the other path. She tells herself she can always switch later, but later keeps getting pushed further away. The golden handcuffs get tighter every year. This is the first regret pattern, choosing prestige over interest. And it's incredibly common because prestige is easy to measure. You can show it to your parents, your friends, your LinkedIn network. Interest is internal. It doesn't photograph well, so we systematically undervalue it. But here's the paradox. The people who follow their genuine interests often end up building more impressive careers anyway, not because they were chasing prestige, but because they were willing to put in the hours, take the risks, and stick with something long enough to get really good at it. Passion isn't everything, but sustained interest is one of the few reliable predictors of long-term success. Now let's talk about the second major regret, staying too long in the wrong place out of fear. There's a concept in psychology called loss aversion. We hate losing what we already have more than we enjoy gaining something new. In career terms, this means we'll stay in jobs we've outgrown because leaving feels like losing. Losing the relationships, the security, the identity we've built, the seniority we've earned. I know someone who stayed at the same company for 8 years after he stopped learning anything new. He wasn't unhappy enough to leave, but he wasn't growing either. He was just existing, collecting a paycheck, going through the motions, telling himself he'd leave when the right opportunity came along, but he wasn't actually looking. He was waiting, and waiting is not a strategy. Here's what happens when you stay too long. Your skills stagnate, your network becomes insular, and worst of all, your tolerance for discomfort atrophies. The longer you stay in your comfort zone, the scarier everything outside of it becomes. Until one day you wake up and realize you've built a career-shaped prison for yourself. The people who regret this the least are the ones who gave themselves permission to leave before they had every detail figured out. They trusted that they were resourceful enough to figure it out along the way, and they almost always were. Third regret, optimizing for money too early in your career. Don't misunderstand me. Money matters. Financial security matters. But there's a huge difference between needing money and optimizing for it. And early in your career, when you have fewer obligations and more flexibility, is precisely when you should be optimizing for learning, not earning. Think about it like compound interest. The skills and connections you build in your 20s and 30s compound over decades. But most people make the opposite trade-off. They take the highest paying offer right out of school, which often means joining a large established company where there'll be a small cog in a big machine. The learning curve flattens quickly, the responsibilities stay narrow, and 5 years later, they've been well compensated for not developing the skills that would make them truly valuable. Meanwhile, someone else took a lower salary to work at a smaller company where they had to wear multiple hats, solve problems nobody had solved before, and build something from scratch. That person is now vastly more capable, more confident, and ironically, more marketable. The short-term pay cut became a long-term investment. Here's the thing about career regrets. They're not usually about the big dramatic failures. Those are easy to rationalize. You took a swing, it didn't work out, you learned something, fine. The regrets that really eat at you are the ones where you didn't swing at all, where you played it safe, where you let fear or convention or other people's expectations make the choice for you. Fourth pattern, Sacrificing relationships and health for career advancement. This one is particularly insidious because the costs are invisible at first. You skip the workout because you have a deadline. You miss the friend's birthday because you're traveling for work. You see your partner for an hour before bed and tell yourself it's temporary, that things will slow down after this project, after this quarter, after this promotion, but it never slows down. There's always another project, another quarter, another promotion, and 10 years later, you're successful by every external metric, but you're also out of shape, disconnected from the people you care about, and wondering why success doesn't feel the way you thought it would. The cruelest part is that we're often rewarded for this behavior. Companies love workaholics. They'll promote you for sacrificing your personal life. They'll celebrate your commitment, and it feels validating in the moment. Until you realize that your company will replace you in a week, but your relationships can't be replaced at all. The people who avoid this regret are the ones who set boundaries early and defend them fiercely. They understand that a career is a marathon, not a sprint, and you can't run a marathon if you're destroying your body and your support system along the way. Fifth regret, following someone else's definition of success. Your parents wanted you to be a doctor. Your peers are all in tech. Your partner thinks you should prioritize stability. And somewhere in all of that noise, you forgot to ask yourself what you actually want. I'm not saying you should ignore practical considerations or wise counsel, but there's a difference between taking advice and outsourcing your agency, between being influenced by others and being controlled by their expectations. The question you need to ask yourself is, if nobody would ever know about your career, if you couldn't tell anyone what you do or how much you make or where you work, would you still want this life? If the answer is no, you're playing someone else's game. Here's what's interesting about all of these regret patterns. They share a common thread. They're all about prioritizing short-term comfort or validation over long-term alignment. They're about making decisions based on fear rather than vision, about optimizing for what looks good rather than what feels right. And the reason these patterns are so common is that they're socially reinforced. When you take the prestigious job, people congratulate you. When you stay in the stable position, people call you responsible. When you work 80-hour weeks, people call you dedicated. Nobody warns you that you're trading your future self for your present comfort. But your future self is the one who has to live with these decisions. And 10 years is not as far away as it feels. So what's the antidote to career regret? It's not about making perfect decisions. That's impossible. It's about making authentic ones. It's about checking in with yourself regularly and honestly asking, am I growing? Am I engaged? Am I building towards something I actually want? And if the answer is no, having the courage to change course before another decade disappears. Because here's the truth. Every day you spend in the wrong career is a day you're not spending in the right one. And while you can't get those days back, you can stop accumulating regrets starting right now. The question is, what will your future self thank you for? And are you brave enough to do it? If this resonated with you, hit that like button so more people can see it. Drop a comment and tell me which regret pattern hit closest to home or what career decision you're wrestling with right now. I read every single comment and I promise your story matters. And if you want more psychology on work, burnout, and building a career that actually fits your life, subscribe to the channel. Because the career advice you really need isn't the stuff that sounds good at dinner parties. It's the stuff that keeps you up at night. And that's exactly what we talk about here.